At the departure gate, Lily stood with her suitcase in one hand and the boarding pass in the other. Despite the excitement in the air for the long-awaited family vacation, she felt an unsettling calmness inside, as if something was amiss, though she couldn't pinpoint what it was. Her parents meticulously organized this trip for months, emphasizing it was meant to be a special retreat for the adults, a chance to reconnect without the chaos of children. Although it pained her to leave her two little ones behind, she complied, reassured by countless affirmations that she deserved some time off and that her kids would be perfectly fine under her friend's care. Lily had made all the necessary arrangements, stocking the fridge, leaving detailed instructions, and even video calling her children twice before departing for the airport. She was ready, eager to embrace this rare opportunity to be herself, apart from her motherly duties. But then, unexpectedly, her sister Claire appeared, accompanied by her 3 children, despite having been assured that this wouldn't happen. Lily's stomach clenched at the sight of swinging backpacks, sticky fingers clutching snacks, and the excited chatter of her nephews and niece. Turning to her parents in confusion, Lily wondered about their agreement. But her mother dismissed her concerns with a wave, suggesting she was overreacting. Her father added, assuring her that Claire's kids were no trouble at all, while little Max was already treating the airport seat like a playground. Despite Lily's silent plea for acknowledgement from Claire, she only received a casual shrug, as if bringing her kids was completely justified, regardless of the arrangement. And then, her mother's offhand remark chilled Lily to the core. They simply loved Claire's kids more. She thought she had misheard, but her mother's warm smile confirmed the unthinkable truth. As tears threatened, Lily recalled her own children at home, probably questioning why their mommy had left them behind. Claire's kids were no more deserving. They were just favored. Feeling betrayed, Lily expressed the truth, but her father only sighed, downplaying her feelings as dramatics. He pointed out that Claire, a single mom, needed the break more. Lily waited for Claire to acknowledge the hurtful situation, but Claire remained indifferent. In that moment, it dawned on Lily that it wasn't a mistake or miscommunication. It was a deliberate choice, valuing Claire's family over hers without even an apology or explanation. For years, Lily tried to excuse their behavior, believing the favoritism was imagined. But now it was crystal clear, leaving Lily with a decision: to remain the compliant daughter or finally stand up for herself. Gripping her suitcase tightly, the white of her knuckles the only visible sign of the storm within, she knew she had to make a choice. Her parents and Claire continued their casual conversations, oblivious to Lily's inner turmoil. Her mother sighed impatiently, minimizing her concerns by suggesting her kids were safe at home, missing the point entirely. Her father further dismissed her emotions as overreactions, assuming Lily would enjoy the trip more without her kids. With a sarcastic laugh tinged with despair, Lily questioned whether they truly believed they were doing her a favor. She glanced at her sister, engrossed in her phone, detached from the familial conflict. Sensing Lily's firm stance, her mother shifted uncomfortably, finally realizing the situation was more serious than she first thought. Enraged, "I understood how challenging it was for her, darling," she whispered, like speaking to a young child. 3 kids without a father. She needed this trip more than you did. There was again that phrase, she needed this more than you. I felt something inside me about to snap. You keep saying that. Do you hear yourself? My voice grew louder, attracting glances from people noticing the tension. But I didn't care. What about me? What about what I need? Or does that not matter because I'm not your struggling, helpless daughter? Mom's eyes widened while Dad's expression grew stern. Lily, lower your voice. No. I stepped forward, my heart pounding. You lied to me. You looked me in the eye and said this trip was adults only. You knew I'd never leave my kids behind if I had a choice. You knew and you didn't care. Claire finally glanced up from her phone, rolling her eyes. God, Lily, just let it go. It's a vacation, not the end of the world. That was the breaking point. I exhaled sharply, gripping the handle of my suitcase. I wasn't going on this trip, not with them, not anymore. Enjoy your vacation. I said, my voice steady and controlled, deadly. I turned on my heel and started walking toward the exit. Lily, don't be ridiculous. Where are you going? The flight is boarding soon, Mom gasped. Not for me, I called over my shoulder. Lily, Dad's voice was sharper now, angrier. Don't you dare act like a child over this. That made me stop. Slowly, I turned around, meeting his gaze head-on. Act like a child? I repeated, my voice eerily calm. That's rich coming from the people who just told me, straight to my face, that they love my sister's kids more than mine. Mom paled, glancing around nervously. Lily, honey, we didn't mean it like that. You meant it exactly like that. I cut her off. You've always meant it like that. I've just been too stupid to see it. The following silence was deafening. Ever unfazed, Claire sighed dramatically. Jesus, Lily, stop being so sensitive. My kids are here. What do you want Mom to do? Kick them out? I laughed then, a real bitter laugh. No, Claire, I don't want her to kick them out. I just wish that once in my life, she thought I was just as important as you are. Mom opened her mouth to protest, but I didn't give her the chance. I turned and walked out of the airport, leaving them behind without another word. I barely remembered the drive back, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly, I was amazed it didn't break. I felt numb, like I was floating outside my own body, watching the scene replay over and over in my mind. I had spent years bending over backwards for my family, letting things slide, making excuses, convincing myself that I was overthinking things. But they had just confirmed what I had feared all along. I was never going to be enough for them. Not as a daughter, not as a sister, not even as a mother. I thought about my babies sitting at home, waiting for me, waiting for the grandparents who never prioritized them the way they did Claire's kids. And suddenly, I knew what had to be done. This wasn't just about the trip, this was about everything. Every holiday when my kids got smaller gifts than Claire's, every birthday party where my parents fawned over her children, barely acknowledging mine. Every time I was made to feel less. No more. By the time I pulled into my driveway, my mind was made up. I wasn't just walking away from the trip, I was walking away from them for good. I sat in my car for a long time, staring at the house where my children were waiting for me. The warmth of home should have made me feel better, but all I could hear were my mother's words. We just love them more. That one sentence had shattered something inside me, something fragile I'd been trying to hold together for years. My parents had never said it out loud before, but they didn't have to. The favoritism had always been there, lingering just beneath the surface, like a wound that never quite healed. I had spent my whole life proving myself, trying to earn the same love and approval that Claire got effortlessly. And for what? For them to tell me, to my face, that my children didn't matter as much? I felt my chest tighten. No more. I was done. I took a deep breath and stepped out of the car. As soon as I opened the front door, two small figures came racing toward me. Mommy, my daughter Emily squealed, throwing herself into my arms, her curls bouncing as she hugged me tightly. Behind her, my son Noah clung to my leg, his little hands squeezing my jeans. You're back already? My best friend Sarah peeked around the corner, confusion on her face. She had been watching my kids while I was supposed to be on my adults-only trip. What happened? She asked, concern lacing her voice. I set Emily down and forced a smile. I'll explain later. Sarah studied my face, then nodded. She knew me well enough to see that something had shifted, something deep. I turned back to my kids, running my fingers through their hair, through Emily's curls. Noah's voice rang out. Did you two enjoy yourselves? We missed you, he said with a pout, wrapping his tiny arms around my waist. The ache in my chest intensified. They deserved better. They deserved grandparents who cherished them, not ones who viewed them as a burden. As I pressed a kiss to Noah's head, holding him tight, I whispered, I missed you too, sweetheart, so much. That evening, once the kids were tucked into bed, I found myself at the kitchen table, my phone glaring at me. My mother had called 4 times, my father twice, and, predictably, not a single call from Claire. I ignored the missed calls, instead opening our family group chat. The familiar space where my parents lavished attention on Claire's kids, while I silently endured years of subtle slights, pretending not to notice the partiality. But not anymore. I started typing. I won't be joining the trip, nor will I continue being part of this family. I paused for a brief moment, then pressed on. All my life, I've been treated as lesser, the same way my children have. Today made it painfully clear that will never change, so I'm finished. Enjoy your vacation, but from this point forward, don't contact me, no calls, no texts, nothing. I read it over, heart pounding in my ears, and with resolve, sent the message. I quietly left each family group chat, blocking my parents' numbers before they could react. It was final. The next morning, Sarah entered my kitchen as the scent of pancakes, rich with butter and syrup, filled the air. "All right," she stated, arms crossed, spill. I placed a pancake on a plate. "I'm done with them," I confessed. Sarah's eyes widened in surprise. "With your parents?" she clarified. I nodded, explaining the deceit, the betrayal, the undisguised favoritism that had finally been laid out in the open. By the end of my tale, Sarah's grip on her coffee mug was so tight, I feared it might break. "Lily, that's terrible," she gasped. I shrugged offhandedly. "It doesn't surprise me, but that doesn't make it right." She met my gaze, her throat tightening. "You're right, it doesn't." Sarah set down her mug. "So, what now?" she asked. I exhaled. "Now I focus on my children, on us. I've spent too long seeking their approval. I don't need it anymore." Sarah regarded me thoughtfully, then smiled warmly. "Good, because you and your kids deserve so much better." Nodding, I felt a newfound lightness in my heart. For the first time, I wasn't waiting for my parents to acknowledge me, because I had finally recognized my own worth. The fallout began swiftly. At first, silence prevailed. An entire day went by without a peep from my family. I knew they had seen my message. Imagine them lounging in their hotel suite, cocktails in hand, perhaps rolling their eyes at my supposed drama. Yet, I wasn't bluffing. On the second day, my phone came to life with calls. First my mom, whose call I watched vibrate on the counter, my stomach clenching, but I left it unanswered. Later, she tried again, multiple times that evening. Then my dad, followed by Claire, a name I hadn't seen appear on my screen in months. I ignored them all. On the third day, messages started pouring in. From Mom: "Lily, sweetie, let's be reasonable. You're overreacting. We need to talk." Dad chimed in: "This nonsense has to stop. Call your mother back." Claire added: "Seriously, Lily? You're seriously mad about this? Grow up." Reading these, a bitter laugh escaped me, not one apology or acknowledgement of wrongdoing. To them, I was just a petulant child throwing a tantrum. By the fourth day, the tone shifted. Mom begged: "Lily, this is ridiculous. We're family. You can't just cut us off." Dad accused: "You're being selfish. Think about all we've done for you over the years." Then the message that made me pause: "Lily, your father and I need financial help. We need to talk." Staring at the screen, I read it twice to confirm I hadn't imagined it. There it was, the real reason for their sudden concern. They weren't anxious about losing me, but about losing my support. The clarity was blinding. For years, I had bent over backward for my family, providing financial assistance time and again, covering bills, lending money, or stepping in when they overspent. I had done this without hesitation because, well, isn't that what family does? But in hindsight, there was a stark realization: not once had they aided me. Not when I faced struggles as a new mother, not during my divorce, not when I scraped by financially. Alone I had stood. Yet the moment they grasped my seriousness about leaving, their instinct wasn't to right their wrongs, but to manipulate with guilt. Each time they lured me back, it wasn't out of missing me, but needing something from me. As I tucked my children into bed that night, a profound calm settled within me. The guilt had dissipated. I picked up my phone, opened the text conversation with my mother, took a deep breath, and started typing. "You're right, Mom. I can't just cut you off. I should have done it years ago." I sent it before second-guessing myself. Not long after, my phone began to ring. It was Mom. I let it ring. I wasn't partaking in their manipulative games anymore. The following morning, there was a barrage of messages waiting for me. Initially, they were the usual pleas. Lily, please, let's talk. This isn't how families should treat one another. We taught you better. But as my silence continued, the tone shifted to insults. You're ungrateful. You're selfish. You'll regret this when we're gone. The final sting came from Dad. Fine, if you want to pretend you don't have a family, then don't come crawling back once you realize your mistake. I stared at that message for a long time. The mistake wasn't what they thought it was. The real error was ever believing they cared for me as I did for them. I locked my phone, breathed out slowly, and redirected my attention to those who truly mattered, my children. They were my real family, and they were enough. As weeks passed by, the calls ceased, the messages dwindled, and eventually, silence took over, bringing with it a peculiar peace. For the first time in years, I wasn't seeking their approval, wasn't pursuing their love, nor was I contorting myself to be noticed. I was merely existing. However, even as I felt this newfound lightness, there remained an ache, not for my parents or Claire, but for someone else, my children's father. 2 years had elapsed since the divorce. 2 years since I had let go of a marriage that had ended long before I found the strength to admit it. Looking back, the parallels between my relationship with him and with my parents were startlingly clear. I had spent my whole life yearning for love that should have been unconditional. Jason and I had met when we were extremely young, far too young. What started as a passionate romance gradually unfolded into a marriage constructed on dreams and hopeful ideals, but lacking any real foundation. Initially, I believed we were happy, that he was my equal, my trusted partner, but over time, fractures began to reveal themselves. During my pregnancy with Emily, he began working late. When Noah was born, he barely lifted his eyes from his phone. At times I needed him the most, his absence was most felt. For years, I convinced myself this was normal, marriage was hard, just a phase. But deep within, I was aware of the truth. Jason lacked the desire to be a husband, a father. One day, he confessed plainly, I just don't think I can do this anymore. He stood there in our kitchen, voice detached. I cradled Noah in my arms, Emily clinging to my leg, their innocent faces oblivious to the gravity of the moment their father chose to leave. Do what? I whispered, already knowing the answer. Any of it. And just like that, he walked away. No major argument, no scandalous affair, just someone who opted out of a life he never truly wanted. Alone, but not really alone. Initially, terror gripped me. How was I to raise 2 children by myself? How would I balance work, finances, exhaustion, and the weight of abandonment? However, soon I realized I had always been alone. Jason was never actually present, never the partner or father our kids deserved. Now, the only difference was not having to wait for him, and that in itself was freeing. Sitting at the dinner table that evening, watching my children laugh over a game they invented, I realized how much lighter my life felt since letting go of my parents. For years I sought Jason's love in the way I needed, sought my parents' recognition and equality, but in both endeavors I failed, not due to my inadequacy, but because they were never capable of offering what I needed. It took 2 years to find peace over an ended marriage. I wouldn't take that long to move on from my parents now. I was choosing myself. That night, after putting Emily and Noah to bed, my phone lit up, Jason. I frowned. He rarely called. We communicated sporadically only about the kids. Curiosity prompted me to answer. His voice fell hesitant, uncertain. Lily, I heard about everything, your parents, the trip, Claire. I tensed. How? Your mom called me, he confessed. My heart froze. What? He exhaled. She tried to get me to talk to you. Said you're causing issues for the family. I laughed sharply, shaking my head. Even after cutting ties, they were still trying. I tried to steer the conversation and brace myself for what Jason might say. After a moment's pause, he admitted, I told her to exclude me from it, that it wasn't my concern. Then clearing his throat, he added, I also mentioned you're a good mom and that they should be thankful you're even willing to have a conversation with them. I was surprised, as Jason had never stood up for me. Not during our marriage, nor when I pleaded for his support for our family. Wow, I finally responded. That's unexpected. He sighed. Look, Lily, I realize I messed up. I was a lousy husband, but there's one thing I do understand. You don't deserve their treatment. You never did. At that moment, words seemed elusive. Jason and I would never be friends, only co-parents. But hearing him acknowledging what I had endured felt like closing a door I didn't know was still open. Thanks, Jason, I replied. He let out a soft laugh. Don't get used to it. And with that, the call ended. As I placed my phone down, I exhaled. I had spent so much of my life focusing on those who hadn't been there for me, but now I was ready to cherish those who were present. Weeks turned into months, and the silence from my parents became permanent. No more calls, messages, or manipulative attempts to draw me back. Initially, it felt odd. For so long, my life had revolved around seeking their approval, longing for affection. Now, that gravitational pull was gone, but surprisingly, I didn't miss them. While preparing dinner one evening, Emily wandered into the kitchen, her stuffed bunny trailing behind. Mommy, she asked, tilting her head, when are we going to visit Grandma and Grandpa again? My hands gripped tighter around the wooden spoon I was using. At the table, Noah perked up. Yeah, it's been ages since we saw them. I swallowed hard. How could I explain to my young children the complexities of manipulation and favoritism, how their grandparents only valued them when convenient? Kneeling to meet their eyes, I gently brushed back Emily's hair. Sweetheart, I began, we aren't going to visit Grandma and Grandpa anymore. Her face twisted in confusion. Why not? I paused, carefully choosing my words, because sometimes family doesn't treat us as we deserve, and when that happens, we have to create our own family, one that truly loves us. Emily pondered this, eventually nodding. Okay. Then she skipped away with her bunny. Just like that, it seemed so simple for her. I wished letting go had been as uncomplicated for me. A few days later, a knock on the door broke my evening routine. Puzzled, I rarely had unexpected visitors. Peeking through the window, my heart sank. Claire. Tempted to ignore her, a part of me, still working on closure, needed to understand why she had come. I opened the door, but didn't invite her in. What do you want, Claire? I asked plainly. She exhaled dramatically. Wow, no greeting? I kept my arms crossed, signaling I no longer played into her manipulations. I've come about Mom and Dad, she confessed, readjusting her stance. I tensed. There's nothing left to discuss. Claire looked at me tiredly. You're angry, I get it, but it's been months. They're still your parents. I laughed, a real laugh. No, Claire, they were my parents until they proved your importance to them outweighed mine. Collecting herself, she scoffed. Oh, please, they love you just enough. Calm but firm, I countered. I'm not indulging in this. I recognize who they are, who you are, and I don't need any of it. Her lips slightly parted as if she didn't expect my determination, but I interrupted. No more being second best. No more being less significant. I'm through pretending it's acceptable. Claire gazed at me for what felt like an eternity, something almost akin to regret in her eyes. But I was past caring. Goodbye, Claire, I announced, shutting the door myself. That evening, as I sipped tea with Sarah on the couch, the kids played in the other room. Your sister showed up, she noted, an eyebrow arched. Yep, I confirmed. Let me guess, she continued. She wanted to brush things under the rug? Go back to how things were. I chuckled. Exactly. Sarah took a sip. And you told her to beat it. A grin tugged at her lips. You're absolutely right, I replied as I relaxed into the couch. For the first time, I felt liberated. No more chasing, pleading, or waiting for love that was never meant to be. I had my kids, my friends, my peace. That was more than enough.